Story one. I know why so many people commit suicide on New Year's, and it's terrifying. I usually spend every New Year's celebration at home with a bottle of liquor as my only dependable company. Last year, I was doing just that while binge watching Supernatural. I remember checking my phone to see what time it was, 11:57 p.m. By then, my vision was blurring, and I was well on my way to my tradition of getting shit-faced for the new year. My family had told me for years that they were concerned. They said I spent too much time alone and that I needed to get out and just do something. Suicide had come to mind numerous times over the years due to the shit that life throws your way. Multiple failed relationships, jobs that went nowhere, and the possibility of good things that just blew up in your face. It all takes a toll on your mental health after time. Last year was no exception. I had found out a few months before that my girlfriend had cheated multiple times and had also told other people about it. Oh, and she also thought it was particularly hilarious, making crude remarks like, "He's so stupid that he can't even tell what's going on." I drink more. It was out of the corner of my blurry vision that I saw a black figure standing by my door. I tried to focus, but I was too deep in the bottle to do that. I just saw this out of focus, black, human-shaped thing. Do it. You know you want to. You know none of this is worth it. You know life is pointless and that none of this matters. Why not do it? Nobody loves you. Nobody cares about you. Not even Carrie. She never loved you, never cared about you. And you're just going to repeat the same mistakes for the rest of your life. So why bother? The voice that said this was deep and gravely, sounding a bit distant, like a radio station on the verge of cutting off. While the voice spoke, I felt the energy drain out of me, and paralysis set in. I can remember mumbling back, "Yeah, you're right. It doesn't matter. I should just kill myself and end it." "How about a knife? That one on the counter over there. It looks sharp enough and should end your pathetic life in no time." "Yes," I replied. At this point, I felt like I was in a dream and that I had no control over my actions. I shuffled into the kitchen, grabbed the knife, and plunged it into my wrist. I woke up in the hospital. My friend Colin had come over, and because he had a key, he was able to get in. He found me on the kitchen floor in a puddle of blood. He was a night shift nurse at a nearby hospital, and his quick thinking saved my life. I was later admitted to a psych ward with my cooperation. I thought I had gone completely mental. They diagnosed me with having schizoaffective disorder with severe depression. I spent the next 2 months rebuilding myself mentally and came out feeling reinvigorated. It was around Halloween that I was browsing around Reddit and found a post called, "What is the creepiest phenomenon with no explanation?" I am very much into the supernatural and believe in most spiritual beliefs about the afterlife, demons, and ghosts, but I am not religious. I saw a reply to the post with a link that said, "How about the mass amount of people that commit suicide on New Year's, and the survivors claim to see a tall, black figure telling them to do it? Here's a link for proof of the phenomenon." Chills covered in my body and I felt my muscles twitch. The memory of the events of that night came back. The black figure, the commands it gave, the way it wanted me to kill myself or sacrifice myself. I posed this question to the post. What does it want? Someone replied, "Well, from what I gather, it's been talked about for centuries amongst various cultures in one form or another. An otherworldly spirit that comes back once a year to gather enough souls to fill itself for another year, like a soul-eating bear back to hibernation." This is when I went down the rabbit hole of Google and researched more into this thing. About 25 pages back, I found a result that was close to what I was looking for. It was on an independent paranormal research group's website, which I will keep anonymous. And the article answered many questions that I had. The earliest mention went back to Roman times, and it was implied referred to as tenebris, written as a name, not a description. And tenebris translated from Latin means darkness. Tenebris was said to appear at winter solstice and once convinced an entire legion, which I found out was 5,000 legionnaires, to rush off a high cliff while they were pursuing a Germanic army, and nearly all of them had died. Julius Caesar found out and demanded a massive sacrifice back in Rome, written by him as to appease the beast Tenebris. A few days later, I went back to the Reddit post and saw dozens of people who had commented saying they had seen Tenebris. I messaged a few of them and we started a group chat on Discord. The number grew to over 250 by December 1st, and we all had a similar experience. One guy was walking on the sidewalk in New York City when he saw a figure in an alleyway and the overwhelming urge to leap in front of a taxi but was able to fight it off. Another man was on a cruise ship and saw a dark figure in the water, demanding that he jump overboard to be with it, which he also did. He said he had 1 foot over the rails when an attendant grabbed him seconds before he could leap. A woman who was suffering from heroin addiction was nearly coaxed into taking a lethal dose by a shadow man. They all sound a little similar, right? I have no idea what to do about it, but it is real. I've seen it, and I'm terrified it will come back this New Year's. It's a few days before New Year's, and I'm already starting to feel it. I haven't moved from this couch in days, and there is plenty of alcohol. It usually hits hard this time of the year, as it is just a reminder of how lonely I am. Colin is out of state with his family this year, and the rest of my friends are also preoccupied. So much for that. I guess I will sulk around my apartment. You know, to keep the tradition alive. Story 2. I hate New Year's Eve. Every year on this night, the anomaly comes back. It first appeared in the sewers of my hometown 5 years ago. The only hints we had of its existence were 2 dismembered teenagers and 1 young girl who had been traumatized into permanent silence. At the time, disturbing as the event was, it was hard for the police to justify spending resources on kids that had been deemed undesirables. The questions focused on what the 3 had been doing in the sewers on New Year's Eve, not on who or what had killed the 2 boys, and the terrified mute girl couldn't answer them in either case. We didn't have much to do in my town other than drink, so our debates at the bar went in circles before fading over the next few months. We were collectively just about to forget about the whole thing when the next New Year's Eve rolled around. The night's celebrations were rowdy, sure, but slightly overshadowed. More than a few people had theorized there might be a serial killer who had chosen that night annually for his ritual. We all kept a nervous eye on the shadowed distances outside the reach of street lamps and porch lights. Just after midnight, screams echoed out from a back lot behind the old hardware store. A tremendous burst of drunk, angry, and protective men surged from the main street bars, myself among them. We'd amped up all night to potentially mass mob a serial killer, but none of us were prepared for what we saw. 4 limbs, a torso, and a head lay scattered around the lot, but not in even pieces. Some tremendous force had sliced them to bits. Worse, the same mute girl from the year before sat huddled behind a dumpster, crying and covered in a sopping wave of blood. Harold, our oldest homeless man, had been murdered, and that girl had become the primary suspect. The police took her and brutally interrogated her. Our town was simultaneously silent and full of whispered gossip the entire time. Nobody knew whether to feel bad for her or whether to demand she be treated more fairly. If she had killed those people that way, she was totally insane. So I fought down my usual urge toward fairness and stood by while they continued hurting her. We all did. Apparently, after 4 days, she finally cracked and told them what she had seen both New Year's Eves. We could only guess at this, though, because the chief of police left the station with a haggard look of suspicion and fear, and without a word. The other cops escorted the girl to the psych ward of our local hospital and left her there indefinitely. They looked for a hypothesized serial killer for a few months, but neither scene held any forensic evidence. They were forced to give up. Not that it mattered. The next New Year's Eve, They were all killed just after midnight. A veritable cyclone of gore and grated chunks exploded across Main Street. I was sitting in Roddy's pub with the other guys when the window suddenly went dark red with blood like rain. The thump scared the living daylights out of us, and we ran to the door when we realized all the windows were opaque. I can't describe the scene outside. Suffice it to say the sewer drains nearly overflowed. Our entire police force, several doctors, and numerous patients from the psych ward were later pieced together out of the morass. Sitting dead center was the same girl, knees curled up, arms over her head, as foot-deep blood swirled past her. Yet again, she had been the only survivor. Only this time, we knew we were not dealing with a serial killer. Something far worse was happening. The girl, of course, had more or less lost her mind. She was also still drugged up from the ward and told us everything in a stunned haze. I truly wish she hadn't. The nature of the anomaly was such that we could not speak to the media or ask for help from outside sources. We simply wouldn't be believed, and there'd be more questions than answers, getting us all in deeper trouble. Though the mess was horrendous, we cleaned up the street as best we could and gave them all good Christian burials. Those hours of picking up body parts with my numb garbage bag gloved hands in the cold light of New Year's Day rank among the second worst of my life. The first worst hours came next New Year's Eve. We were all in it now, a town secret among the men. The anomaly was going to come back, and we had to be ready. Part of me hoped it wouldn't return, but the rest of me knew with a sick feeling that it would. It had been growing bolder each year, starting underground and then slowly moving into places that were increasingly public. If we didn't stop it, Lord knew where it would go next. Last New Year's Eve, we sat waiting in our houses. There was no drinking, as we would have to be sharp. There was no gathering, because it would find us. There were no last-minute goodbyes or phone calls. We didn't intend to die. It came between one blink and the next, just before midnight, and just as the poor girl had said. She was my first sight. This would be her fourth time through nightmare. She didn't scream. She didn't move. She seemed completely resigned to her fate, recovering from the blurry, odd feeling of being taken. I looked around at the others. There were the 43 men we'd expected, the girl, and several wives and children. My heart sank as I saw them. Someone had screwed up. Beyond our scattered group, strange ivory tiles radiated out to meet smooth alabaster walls that arced around us in an unbroken circle. The ceiling, just reachable by a jump, held the same tiled pattern. I took this in quickly, then focused on the anomaly at our center. It was as she'd said, 6 thin black circles rotated on an axis to form the framework of a sphere shape. Each circle seemed to be made of impossibly thin material, like a fine wire honed into razor blade sharpness in every dimension. An ivory sphere hovered inside it, blank. There was very little delay for getting our bearings. The ivory sphere lit blue while people were still cussing and looking at each other. The girl screamed to make them pay attention, and we looked down at our feet. A large number of the semicircular tiles on the floor had turned blue. I touched one, and it rose about a foot up and turned green. Getting the idea, everyone else started running around and hitting the blue tiles, raising them up and turning them green while the sphere began humming louder. As it reached a crescendo, we realized that all the tiles had been activated, but we weren't sure if that was what we were supposed to do. Apparently it wasn't, because the sphere reached a high note, went silent, and altered one of its surrounding black circles. The circle rotated until it was flat in the air and then began expanding rapidly. People screamed, but we all ducked in time. We'd all seen what this thing had done to everyone else, and we weren't about to get caught off guard. The worst injury was the removal of a small tuft of hair from old Benson's mop. We crouched, relieved, until the lights on the floor changed and the humming began rising again. All these factors and certain details of the room I can't relate to you told us the terrible truth. It was a puzzle, exactly as the girl had told us. A child's puzzle, built by someone or something so exotically different from us that we found it murderous rather than simple. There were no instructions, the same way we don't put instructions on, say, a plastic tower with several brightly colored concentric rings of different sizes. The child was simply expected to try different permutations and have fun with no danger involved. But our ring tower toy would seem very different to, say, a creature lethally allergic to plastic. It might ask, why would anyone make this? What monsters would create such a torture device? And we asked those questions too, as we failed to figure out the addition of red to the tiles. The second black circle around the sphere split into numerous vertical lines that began spiraling out through the room. Mercifully, these were slow, and only a single hand was lost among the crowd. One of the wives screamed in pain, but her husband was there to bandage her stump, stem the bleeding, and grab her loose hand for possible reattachment, assuming we got out of this in time. The ceiling. The ceiling tiles were separate objects from the tiles below them. As the sphere began humming again, we all realized that at the same time. Jumping up, we hit red tiles, which turned blue and lowered. Below, we hit green raised tiles, which rose further and turned back to blue. The new color, yellow, only turned white when struck. The men threw out numerous theories. Did it have something to do with primary colors? Were we supposed to make patterns? The two black waves had halted at the extremities of the circular room. Should we try to take advantage of the new small gaps in the sphere's defense and destroy it directly? Whatever we were doing wasn't working. The girl warned us that the deadly black energy lines could come back from the outer walls, so we all managed to duck as the first ring shot inwards and rejoined the sphere's outer shell. We all thought we're actually getting somewhere. We all thought we could figure it out. Maybe we couldn't have given enough time, but when we looked around for the fourth change, we saw nothing new. Mary Baker stepped on a white tile and it rose and turned blue. The game hadn't been designed for us. There was only one chilling conclusion, something that not even the thrice surviving girl had known. The puzzle involved colors we couldn't see. It hadn't been built for our eyes. Collective hysterical screaming drowned out everything else. Our plans and strategies suddenly seemed stupid and ill-fated. We literally had no way to win. Every single person in that strange, otherworldly trap was going to die. Except there was one other catch, a sort of fail-safe. I suspected it was the way the girl had survived 3 times already, and I was certain she'd kept it to herself on purpose. It was why I'd brought a knife and a gun, both hidden in my clothes. None of us intended to die, but I intended to die the last one. The game let out in the middle of deep backcountry woods. Initially, I thought this meant the anomaly was simply moving on a straight line to nowhere. Later, I would realize that it was actually halfway to the state capitol. There was no gore explosion this time. The black lines of energy hadn't torn apart nearly as many victims as before. All the blood and organs and intestines were still in the dead, held mostly together by their empty vessels. As the only survivor, exhausted and covered in blood myself, I walked straight home and took a shower. My first thought was not to tell anyone. I could never explain the disappearance of all those people, and certainly not a clearing in the woods filled with dozens of bodies. You see, though the anomaly was built as some sort of puzzle for a child from a species unlike anything we can imagine, it was designed to be a multiplayer competition. The game automatically ends when only one participant is left. I kept this burden, this nightmare, trauma, and guilt to myself for an entire year. Tonight I speak, maybe I've lost my mind. I did think I could live with this and keep the secret to myself, just as the girl thought she could. She only cracked once the first time and told Harold, the homeless man. The police beat it out of her and sent her to an asylum. The cops, the doctors, and the other patients paid the price. We men heard it from her, and some of us told our wives and children, consigning them to death. That's another complication of being from a totally different culture than the anomaly. Just talking about it acts as an invitation to the yearly game, and we just don't know how to turn that invitation off. It might be as simple as a spoken phrase or a mental rejection in a particular manner unknown to us, or it might be something that requires organs or perceptions we don't have. In any case, this year, tonight, I speak, because I have no idea what might happen if I'm the only player. I tell myself that we can figure out the puzzle if we have enough people, enough smart people, enough different people, that maybe someone has an inspiration, or maybe someone has eyes that can detect the unseen colors. But to tell the truth, I want as many people as possible because I'm just scared and sorry. Happy New Year's. See you at midnight. Story 3, Happy New Year from 104.6 FM. From down here, you can't see jack shit. You see, the nice thing about being perched in a watchtower 50 feet up in the air was that we could see the wide, open world of trees and mountain peaks that surrounded the village of Pine Haven. As its protectors, that was kind of important. But now that the tower is gone, we're confined to a pathetic little hut no bigger than a shed and settled on the ground. It feels like we're all living in a sardine can, and the snowstorms coming from the mountain are like big shoes kicking us around. The sounds of construction were giving me a headache. I was plagued by constant fears that the portable outhouse we all shared would tip over with a gust of wind. But worst of all, it was a week after Christmas and Daniel was still singing carols. Hey, this is Operator Evelyn, codename number 28 from the Pine Haven Emergency Broadcast Station. This is a busy time for us. But I wanted to take a few minutes to tell the story of how New Year's Eve went absolutely fucking bananas. It began the way a lot of things do around here. Early in the morning when I arrived at work with a big yawn and an even bigger travel mug of Too Strong coffee. I traded places with Finn, who gave me a crisp high five on his way out the door. I've been trying to get him to move on to finger guns, but I don't think we're quite there yet. While he was heading back to the old homestead to get some well-deserved sleep, I was making sure our morning music lineup was set for the next hour. Finn had it perfectly organized down to the second, as per usual, pre-recorded ads already slid into place. He had even cleaned all the discount post-Christmas candy wrappers off of my side of the desk. I spent the next few hours settling in, giving the morning weather forecast, and practicing saying Happy New Year in sign language. I should have known it was about to be a weird day as soon as I saw the sunrise come up over the horizon. It was more purple than usual. The rich color of the sky remained late into the morning, surrounded by long tendril-shaped flares like a second sun. What do they call it? Uncanny valley, I think, when something is just off enough to catch your attention, but not so strange that it looks impossible. I regarded the sunrise with a squint of suspicion, waiting for it to fade into the bright blue winter sky. It did, in time. And then, at 10 o'clock in the morning, the door came bursting open and a cold wind rattled the thin plywood walls. It was my worst nightmare in human form, here to haunt me yet again. Feliz Año Nuevo. "Y'all little creep," Daniel said energetically, pushing the door closed with his shoulder. He was still on crutches, his broken leg in a big white cast. It was covered in little Sharpie drawings, most of them from me. It looked like his siblings added a few during the Esperanza Christmas party this year. My personal favorite was a doodle of Bartholomew the bird holding a knife. I raised my eyebrows at him over the lid of my coffee cup. "I don't speak French," I teased. Dan hopped over to the desk and flopped into his usual chair, leaning his crutches up against the edge of the table. "Okay, smartass." He kicked my chair with his good leg, causing me to roll a few inches to the side. "I take it back then. I hope you have a terrible New Year. I hope you eat a whole bag of dicks." Oh, delicious. My favorite. I rolled back into place again, curling one leg underneath me and getting comfortable. Happy New Year to you too. So how'd you sleep last night, Danny boy? He was fixing his curls, which had been tossed around in the high winds. He picked up a clipboard and spun slowly on his wheels, reading over the day's notes. We had a raffle going on that he was extremely excited about. I slept great, he said, pointing to his chin. What at first looked like a scab from a bad shave turned out to be rug burn instead. The nice thing about sleepwalking with a broken leg? You don't get far. I cringed, squinting my one eye to look at the nasty mark. Ooh, ouch. Better than getting lost in the woods, though, right? Or jumping into mysterious holes. It was one singular mysterious hole, and I did not jump. I attempted a graceful swan dive before you interrupted. Yeah, okay, I snorted, getting out of my seat. I turned to the little coffee maker we had plugged in behind the desk, filled with distilled water from jugs. It was sitting on a rickety old chair we found in the shed. Sincere apologies, connoisseur of strange holes. I didn't mean to offend. Do you want some coffee while I'm back here? Dan threw a crumpled up piece of paper at the back of my head. He was in rare form today. No thanks, darling. I'm good. I'm off my tits on Monster Energy. I heard the distinct pop of a can top. I snickered, tossing the paper wad in the trash. That explains everything. While you get settled in, want to do the raffle announcement? After Come Fly With Me? I didn't pre-record it because I thought you'd want to do the honors. Oh, you do love me. Dan gave a huge gap-toothed grin while he adjusted his hearing aid, making sure it was secure before putting his headphones over top. As I pretended to gag at his cutesy bullshit, he started to loudly sing along with the radio, just as I feared he would. Our new setup sucks enormous hairy ass, if I'm being completely honest. It was built in an afternoon out of plywood and spare pieces from an old barn, each plank a different shade of peeling paint. There's no plumbing, no heat, and if you want to keep something refrigerated, you just stick it in the snow by the door. The plexiglass window out front isn't much of a lookout either. All we can see is snow and the tree line, which is far darker and more foreboding from this angle than it ever was up in the air. We're packed into a space just barely large enough for all of our equipment. The old tower wasn't very big, sure, but at least Daniel and I could sit side by side without constantly assaulting one another with our elbows. As I refilled my travel mug, I could hear my co-host crooning into his microphone. It's 10 o'clock on a beautiful Saturday morning, and my partner and I just want to wish everyone down in Pine Haven a fantastic New Year's Eve. For tonight and tonight only, we'll be giving away a special prize to one lucky winner. To enter the raffle, call and tell us your New Year's resolution, and we'll draw a name at midnight for a $50 gift card to the Pottery Barn. I stifled a snort of laughter. Pine Haven was still rebuilding after the disaster that happened before Christmas, but there was something so pathetically hopeful about offering compensation in the form of $50 worth of pottery. I briefly wondered what would happen if no one called us, but I didn't say anything. It would break Dan's squishy little heart. As it turned out, we actually did get some calls. Bill from Chestnut Avenue wants to eat less red meat. Kendall wants to call her sister more often. Emily says she'd go to a gym if Pine Haven had a gym, but she'll settle with the long walks in the evening. Travis said he wants to start sleeping better at night. Patricia wants to sleep better at night. Jamal wants to sleep better at night. Paige wants to sleep better at night. Anthony wants to sleep better at night. By mid-afternoon, the sky was already starting to grow dark. We could hear the distinct caw of several dozen crows, perched at the tree line where the forest met the clearing. We could hear the rumble of something that sounded like thunder, but we knew it probably wasn't. All at once, the wind stopped. The trees were completely still. The wispy, dark clouds in the sky were as still as a picture. Everything got eerily, horribly silent. I stood at the window, my breath making a warm fog on the plexiglass surface. So, what about you? I heard Dan ask from behind me. What's your resolution this year? I thought about it in silence for a moment. I wanted to stop drinking entirely, maybe try therapy. I wanted a will to live, not just for Pine Haven, but because I was happy. I wanted to figure out what made me happy. I wanted to dance. I wanted to say, I love you more often to the people who mattered to me. To start drinking more water, I lied. What about you? Daniel was silent for a minute before he too had an answer. Maybe I'll write a book. My lip twitched in the tiniest of smiles while I watched the crows gather on the radio tower. The blinking red light at the top was dancing against a pure black sky while the clock on the wall ticked loudly. I think that's a great idea, Danny boy. It was late by the time Finn showed up, agreeing to take over for Dan and I. What's with all the fucking crows? He asked the moment he stepped inside, slamming the door behind him. The thin walls shuddered and the whole place shook. They're in town too, thousands of them probably. Maybe it's an omen, Daniel said, wiggling his fingers. Also, Happy New Year, Finn. Got any resolutions? Yeah, to get all the bird shit off my car. He sighed and sat down. All three of our chairs packed in tightly side by side. He looked tired, dark circles under his eyes and his hair more gray than usual. Sometimes I suspected that Daniel and I were the cause for that, honestly. So what have I missed? I sat back in my seat, tapping my pen against the edge of the desk. Lots of calls. Daniel's been a popular boy tonight with his little raffle idea. We heard thunder earlier. It wasn't thunder. Finn shook his head. There's another big sinkhole at the edge of town. You know where the old Christmas tree farm was? I narrowed my eye. Was? Yeah, it's in a hole, Finn continued, lighting up a cigarette and shoving the rest of the box in the front pocket of his coat. Looks like a giant ditch now, going straight down into the abandoned mine shaft. Thankfully, no one was hurt. Phil's truck was gone. Place was all locked up. He must have left before Christmas. Damn, I frowned, warming my hands by sticking them back inside the sleeves of my jacket. I really liked that place when I was a kid, too. My dad always let me take the first swing. The thought of those mines opening up outside of the town, so close to the road, sent a chill up my spine. I think everyone else felt it, too. I remembered the horrible, melted screams of that amalgamate beast, its many human torsos all crawling over one another like a centipede, its hooves stampeding through the trees. I remember the way it could crack the pines in half. The Hydra, it was still out there somewhere, missing pieces but as angry as ever. Sometimes I still saw the earth shift at the tree line. It's quiet in here, Finn said after a long silence, breathing out a puff of smoke that made the view of our computer monitors hazy. Did the clock stop working? Sure enough, we all looked up at the wall and saw that the circular clock had paused. It was just a few minutes to midnight. The minute hand stuck on the number 11 and twitching in place. The clocks on our monitors read the same. Do you guys see that? I was staring out the window, slowly standing up and pushing my chair away. As I stepped towards the plexiglass, which was now beginning to fog up from the body heat stuffed inside this tiny room, I saw that purple light again. This wasn't the light from the forest, the one glowing from within a giant hole in the ground. This one floated above the trees and into the sky, flares of light popping and wiggling around it. The second sun. It grew brighter, large, perhaps closer. I heard a great and powerful drone, loud enough to make my ears hurt. Daniel took out his hearing aid, the tiny device squealing into the open air as he dropped it on the desk. All at once, we heard a rapid ticking. The clock was moving again, racing as if trying to catch up. Our monitors began to blink. The time on the screen flickered and began to count upwards. 11:59, 11:60, 11:61. Minutes that didn't even exist. There was a loud screech from all three of our headsets, volume blaring, and seemingly coming from all directions at once. We'll drink a cup. The floor began to shake beneath our feet. The lights flickered on and off, changing colors from red to orange to purple. Of kindness yet. Crows were flying at the window, hitting the plexiglass. The glittering stars flew overhead as if the hours were speeding by. The purple glow, now drifting closer, grew so bright that it took up the entire view. For the sake of Old Lang Syne, everything in the room shut off with a loud buzz. The lights, the computer monitors, the audio console. I heard nothing except our own panicked breathing and the sound of my pulse inside my ears. Finally, there it was again. The clock on the wall began to tick. It was 5 minutes to midnight again. Daniel was the first one to speak. "Okay, Jesus, what the fuck was that?" I tapped the keyboard of my computer, testing to see if the screen would come back on. Nothing happened. "I don't know, but I think we lost power. Shit, 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 shit. I'm gonna go get the generator started." I drew my coat closer around my neck, the night's chill sinking in. As I took 2 small steps toward the door, I reached for the handle and prepared to run out without even looking where I was going. I would be shocked to find that instead of hitting the snowy ground, my boots sank through the air with a plunge that made my heart drop all the way down to my knees. In an instant, I was dangling, holding on to the door handle for dear life. I felt the wind blowing against my legs, the cold air whistling in my ear. I was looking up at the open doorway where Finn was already rushing to the edge to grab my arms. The old, worn hinges of the door were starting to protest against my weight. "Evelyn, let go!" Finn yelled, gripping my arms right below the elbows. No," I yelped, my voice coming out as a panicked squeak. "Fuck you!" "Trust me, let go or you and the door are gonna drop." I looked down. I really shouldn't have looked down. We were floating at least a half-mile above the forest, dirt and roots dangling from the bottom of the shed as if it had been plucked off the ground. Below us, that magenta light coming from that endless pit was shining brightly like a round burst of color, and I looking up into the stars. I was hyperventilating, my head was starting to spin, the world turning on its side as I grew dizzy and faint. When I looked back up at the door, Finn wasn't there anymore. Someone else had taken his place. I saw a thick red beard, tan freckled skin, a yellow and orange fireman's coat. He was holding my elbows tightly, nodding his head with a comforting, reassuring smile. "I got you, Ginger Snap," he said, "but you gotta let go." I'm gonna fall." The voice that came out of my mouth wasn't mine. It was tiny, young, childlike. "You ain't gonna fall, darling. Trust your pa. I've got you." I braced myself, teeth clenched. Before I could have a chance to doubt my decision, my hand released the doorknob and I felt my weight shift suddenly and startlingly. My eyes squeezed shut as I was pulled upwards, my stomach hitting the edge of the doorway first before the rest of me toppled onto something warm and human-shaped. He didn't smell like Dad anymore. He smelled like cigarette smoke and pine. Finn gave me a pat on the back, pushing me by the shoulders to ease me off of him so that he could stand. I clutched my chest, sitting in the middle of the floor and struggling to breathe. Daniel was out of his chair at this point, sitting on his ass halfway to the door, as if he had either fallen or tried to scoot instead of using his crutches. "I think I'm having a panic attack," he wheezed. "You're always having a panic attack." Finn grabbed Daniel under the arms, pulling him up and putting a crutch under his arm so that he could stand. "Lynn, you okay?" I looked up at him, my sight still bleary, head still spinning. I blinked and felt a tear rolling down my cheek. Yeah, I'm okay." I sniffed as Finn grabbed my hand and pulled me up, patting my shoulders. "So, don't go out that door, okay, fellas?" I forced a small chuckle. All 3 of us were looking out the window now, watching the wind push us along as we floated far above the trees and just under the clouds. The wooden boards were creaking and whining like a boat being rocked by the waves. The dingy hanging light above us started to buzz. The bulb crackled back to life. Our computer screens flickered. The radio static was blasting in our headsets. We heard the music again. Should Old Acquaintance Be Forgot? A warm red light filled the sky, thunder roaring as meteors began to fall from the heavens. They made the sound of whistling fireworks as they fell. We all braced ourselves while the shed began to rock, flames engulfing the trees, and never brought to mind. The ticking was louder now. 11:62, 11:63. We were falling. The building gave one violent roll to the side like an aircraft going out of control, and suddenly we could see the flaming trees below getting closer and closer. The three of us fell into a pile on the floor. Finn was grabbing the edge of the desk for dear life. Daniel was squeezing me so hard that it hurt. 11:63, 11:64. The impact never came. It was as if I blinked and everything was normal again. I was standing there looking out the window at the banks of snow and the tree line up ahead. I could see the clock on the wall frozen at 11:50 out of the corner of my eye. I could see the computer screens glowing bright from the corner of my other eye. Okay, now I'm actually having a panic attack. I heard my voice, but I wasn't the one to say it. I turned on a mic and saw a short, red-headed figure in a ratty old denim jacket standing behind me. She clapped her hands over her mouth, then looked at her own freckled fingers and let out a shriek. How the fuck was I standing in two places at once? Who the fuck are you? I yelled, pointing a finger. It wasn't my voice that came out of my mouth. It wasn't my hand that was reaching. Dan, I think, the Evelyn imposter said, holding up her hands. She, or rather he, looked at his new body and patted up and down as if making sure he wasn't dreaming. Finn? Why am I a white woman? I'm not Finn. Then who? I'm Evelyn, and you're me. No, I'm Dan. Holy shit, both of you shut the fuck up. Dan's voice boomed out with an aggression I had never heard before. With an uncharacteristic scowl on his face, he stomped across the room with one crutch thumping on the floor, grabbing his hearing aid and popping it back in. I swear you two each have one half of a brain cell and you can't figure out how to rub them together. I'm Finn, you're Dan, you're Evelyn. He pointed at each of us in succession. We just switched bodies. I looked down at my hands, calloused, rough, dirty around the fingernails. I was inside Finn's body, using his voice. Daniel was inside of mine. Suddenly, I was tall and heavy, and the back of my throat tickled from the burn of cigarette smoke. The real Finn, wearing Dan's physical form, but still sporting that severe, intense frown on his face, put a hand on his hips and looked at the clock on the wall. If this is anything like last time, we just have to wait it out for a couple of minutes. Just try not to hyperventilate and pass out. Okay, fine. This is fine. I took a heavy breath, leaning against the wall. It felt weird to be so big and blocky and square. Hey, Finn, your back is killing me. How goddamn old are you? In hindsight, it was hilarious to see Dan's face glaring at me with the most serious, no-nonsense expression I had ever seen. It just wasn't like him to look like he could legitimately kick my ass, nor was it like him to take control of a situation so effortlessly. I have to admit, I liked him more when he was just a big, dumb goof. Thankfully, the goof was still in the room with us. I don't like this, the real Dan said, my voice coming out of his mouth as he hunched over, uncomfortable with the new body he was stuck in. My condolences. My head is pounding and I'm freezing, and I think I bumped my nipple on the desk, and it really hurts. Daniel Esperanza, don't you touch my nips. I pointed at him, and he recoiled with both hands in the air, one eye wide and freckled cheeks bright red in almost an instant. God, did I actually blush like that? I wasn't gonna, he squeaked hoarsely, shoving his hands in my coat pockets to prove his innocence. I'm just saying, you are very sensitive in places that I don't usually stop, and your mouth is really dry. Did you even drink water today? You're making this weird. Meanwhile, Finn was propped up against the desk with his fingers squeezing the bridge of his nose, stuck in a shack with the two biggest idiots in the universe. Maybe he had a point about the whole half a brain cell thing. For Auld Lang Syne, my dear. The radio crackled again. A red light was coming from the screens, bright and blinding in a dark room. For Auld Lang Syne. The clock on the wall was moving again, the minute hand circling the face so quickly that it became a blur. We'll take a cup of kindness yet. Outside of our shack, daylight turned to night and back again in a matter of seconds. It was like watching time race backwards impossibly fast, every sunrise and sunset burning our eyes. For the sake of Auld Lang Syne, a bell was ringing in my ear, so loud that it made my skull vibrate and my teeth chatter. I was cold, standing outside in the wind. When my two eyes adjusted, I could see the endless forest up the mountainside. The view was different than what I remembered. Same place, same mountain range, but there were no lights from the village. No concrete, no radio tower. And somewhere in those pine-covered peaks, a thick bank of fog was swirling and quickly spreading down toward the tree line. My heart started pounding. I looked down at my feet and saw buckled shoes, stockings, and rickety wood floors beneath me. I was in a high tower made of planks, a massive brass bell ringing in my ear. People were yelling down below, their voices far away but the panic so familiar. "Thomas!" a man screamed. He was standing in the snow at least 20 feet down from where I stood, his hands cupped around his mouth to yell up in my direction. He wore a raccoon tail hat, a shotgun hanging off his shoulder. I didn't recognize him. I didn't recognize anyone. "Ring the bell, you fool! Why did you stop?" I looked at my hands, tanned and calloused from rough work. They were still wrapped around a thick piece of rope. I remembered a moment like this, perched on top of the old Pine Haven church, ringing the bell as if my life depended on it. It did then, and it probably did now. I pulled with my entire weight, the brass bell above my head making a low metallic drone before it finally chimed, the sound carrying for miles and miles. The pain in my ears was impossible to ignore. My arms were burning. My hands felt like they were on fire. Somewhere in the deep, echoing hum, I heard the music on the wind. We too have paddled in the stream. The fog was racing closer, tumbling over itself like rolling waves. From morning sun till night, I pulled the rope as hard as I could, the stilts under my feet shaking. My legs were growing weak. My hands were beginning to bleed. The seas between us lured and swell. My hands slipped and the rope slid out of my grasp, sending me falling to my knees. Sore, bleeding palms were flat against the wood, and the air around me was growing stale and dark. I heard the static from a headset. I heard the buzz of flickering lights up above, a light bulb struggling to come back to life. I saw the familiar floor of our tiny wooden hovel. I inspected my sore palms, seeing that the blood had gone and the pain was starting to fade into a memory. Still, my heart was racing out of control. Finn was sitting propped up against the wall, a hand on his chest. Daniel was next to me, lying flat on his back and panting as if he had just run a marathon. I watched him pat at his face, his body, making sure he was back in his own self again. "I think we're back home," he said between heavy, wheezing breaths. "What the hell is going on? This did not happen last year. Remember last year? It was boring and normal, and it was great." "Yeah, well, things are changing, buddy," Finn said, pushing himself up and cracking his back as he stood. He paused the moment his eyes settled on the window, standing as still and frozen as a statue. I watched him, waiting for him to blink. Don't Move, he whispered. My curiosity got the better of me. Craning my neck over the broadcast desk just enough to see through the lookout window, I peered into the cold, snowy night while holding my breath as if waiting for something to jump out and grab me. What I saw was far less violent, but far more chilling. Dozens, if not hundreds of deer were standing in the clearing right outside our shack, shoulder to shoulder, and staring directly at us with dark and unblinking eyes. Some of them had extra antlers. Others had additional eyes or two noses. Some had human hands instead of hooves at the bottom of their legs. I could hear their strange and haunting bellows, the thump of their steps against the frozen ground. All three of us sat completely still, afraid to move, afraid to blink. The window was clouded by hot breath, the deer huffing and puffing warm fog into the frozen winter air. The harsh glower from their eyes felt like a warning, a threat, made all the more terrifying by their uneasy stillness. They were waiting for something. All at once, we heard a jaw-aching scrape that came from all sides. It was the sound of antlers clacking against the thin wood walls, dragging along the chipped paint and digging into the pulp. We heard hooves stomping above, the horrible and warped groans of elk. Dust fell from the ceiling in thick clouds, the thin plywood cracking and the bulb above our heads shaking like a spotlight. And we heard the call, a great bellow that shook the whole world. Something was rising above the pines, massive and heavy and adorned with curling antlers. It was the head of that amalgamate beast, severed at the neck and larger than a house, levitating and leaving a trail of blood and sinew beneath the open, steaming wound. Its mouth opened, revealing sharp teeth that went all the way back into its throat. The sound that came out made my bones tremble. 100 eyes opened to the sky, purple and shining like beacons. It looked at us. Its glow burst through my skull like a white-hot flame the moment one of its eyes met mine. All at once, I wasn't in this world anymore. I wasn't on this earth. I was in a place I couldn't describe, between time and space and life and death and everything in between. I was one with it, and that thick black blood was pounding through my veins like the roots of a tree that connected us all. I felt as if I was a part of everyone who had ever been lost to this forest, everyone who had ever made that blood sacrifice. My father, the forest rangers, the sleepwalkers, Jennifer. For old acquaintance be forgot. I was remembering a night I had tried to forget. It was New Year's Eve. I was drinking champagne, stuck in a crowd of people I didn't know. Jennifer was dancing with someone else, and never brought to mind. 10, 9, 8. Time was ticking down and my heart was racing. I kept my eyes on her, trying to stick with someone I knew. She looked so pretty in gold. Should old acquaintance be forgot? 7, 6, 5, 4. She spotted me and gave a huge smile, lifting up her glass. She just had her braces removed. Her arms reached for me in a hug, for the sake of Auld Lang Syne. As the crowd erupted in a cheer, I felt her lips on mine for the briefest second. I didn't have a chance to close my eyes or kiss her back. I was too surprised. She was drunk. She probably didn't realize who she kissed. She probably forgot about it the next day. We never spoke of it again. The floor of the shed was hard and cold against my back. The dingy yellow light above our heads was swaying, slowing until it stopped moving altogether. I heard that ticking again. Simple, rhythmic, normal. I sat up quickly, blinking my eye in the dim light and struggling to catch my breath. Almost immediately, I turned my gaze to the clock. It was 11:59 again. My legs felt like they had been filled with mashed potatoes, shaking weakly and numbly. When I stood, Daniel was already sitting at the broadcast desk, a hand to his forehead as sweat dripped down his face. Finn had a hand on his shoulder. I think he got the effects of that light worse than we did. It's counting down again, I said breathlessly, huddling near my coworkers, my friends, as time ticked on. 30 seconds left before midnight. Do you think it'll just keep changing forever? Daniel was squeezing my hand, shaking like a leaf in the wind. Finn was staring forward at the fresh falling snow. It glittered in the dim red light of the radio tower that loomed above. 10 seconds left. The horizon was eerily quiet. The sky was dark. The trees were still. The wind was whistling between the planks of our ramshackle broadcast station. The crows were still perched at the tree line, ruffling their feathers and cawing up at the stars and wisps of snowy clouds. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And for the first time, we saw the minute hand click into place. Our computer monitors followed an instant later. 1200 midnight, January 1st, 2023. I let out a breath so big and so tightly held that it burned. The hour was over. We made it to the brand new year, standing in the exact same room where it all started. My travel mug was still warm on the desk. The pen I had been tapping against the wood sat right where I left it. Auld Lang Syne, the Guy Lombardo version, started playing through the headphones just as it had been set. And when 12:01 appeared on the clock, the three of us finally relaxed our shoulders like three frozen statues that had finally been released from time. "Happy New Year, you dumbasses," Finn said. He gave me a casual side hug first, then ruffled Daniel's fluffy head of hair. "Take a breather and then get the hell out of here. Go celebrate, drink some grape juice or something. Take a nap." Taking a nap sounded great, but easier said than done. I sat down, my hands sliding down my face in exasperation. My heart had been pounding out of control, but now it was slowing to the usual pitter-patter of constant, reasonable anxiety. I looked over at Dan, who still had that far-off look as if his soul had been ripped out of his body. I tapped him on the shoulder to get his attention and signed with my hands, "Happy New Year." It made him smile finally. He signed back, picking up his half-empty energy drink and tapping it against the ridge of my travel mug. "So, bud," I raised my eyebrows. "Did you remember to write down those phone numbers from the raffle?" Daniel's smile disappeared and his eyes widened halfway through a sip from his can. He stared off into the distance for a few uneasy seconds before whispering under his breath, "Oh, shit." "This is Evelyn from the 104.6 FM emergency broadcast station, and on behalf of myself and the two idiots I share a brain with, Happy New Year and good luck." Story 4, it's 32nd December today. I was sitting in my room in front of my laptop talking with my friends on a Zoom call. A minute was left for 21. We all counted down as smiles spread on our faces. We thought that things would be better next year. Everyone did. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Happy New Year. All of us shouted out as the clock hit 12, the date, 32nd December. I thought it was a glitch with my phone. I checked my laptop to find the same date. Everyone's face on the call had a confused expression. "Guys, I think there's a glitch on my devices," Gary said. Everyone repeated the same thing after him. All our devices had the same date. I turned on the TV and in the corner of the screen was the same date. "What the fuck?" I muttered to myself. The news channel was chaotic when I turned it on. Everyone was moving around the set of the local news channel as reports came in about the date. People in my street got out of their houses and raced back and forth to their neighbors' houses. A call came on my phone. "Guys, I've got to go." I left the Zoom meeting and answered the call. Reports are now coming in from all over the town that the date is not 1st January 2021, but 32nd December 2020. I silenced the TV and answered the call. "Blake, we need you here," a raspy voice said. "Why, what's happened?" "Something I can't tell you like this. Come at 24 Street." I tried to ask him further about the situation, but he ended the call. Not like I have a choice, I thought. I put on my uniform and headed to the address he gave me. There were 2 police cars and an ambulance parked outside of a house with tape surrounding the whole perimeter. "What's happening?" I asked as an officer as I approached the house. "Oh, Blake, ask him." He pointed to a man standing at the door wearing a hat and a white trench coat. "Drew," I called out to the man. "What the hell's going on?" "Blake," he turned around and took his hat off. "Hell if I know." "Why'd you call me?" I asked. "Well, you see, it's hard to explain. Hell, it's impossible to explain. Look there." He pointed to the ambulance. As it was closing its doors, I saw a man in there with a missing arm. "See that man? Now come inside," he said as he walked towards the door. Inside, there was nothing. "What's here?" I asked. "Nothing, absolutely nothing. It's like no one even lives here, right?" I nodded. "Well then, come upstairs." I followed him up there. I felt like something was off here at this place. It just felt weird. Upstairs, there was furniture, a kid's room, an attic in which stuff was kept. "What the fuck?" "What the fuck indeed," Drew said after me. "And that man you just saw riding away, you saw how his arm was cut off, right? Well, there are no remains of a cut-off arm here." I turned my head to him in confusion. "The hell you mean? Did you check properly?" "Thrice in the whole neighborhood." I scratched my head in confusion. "Well, how did his arm come off? Who cut it off?" "No one." "Jesus, stop with the riddles and get to the damn point," I said with irritation. "This family was in the living room," he said as he sat down on the bed, "celebrating New Year like everyone else. When the clock struck 12, everyone supposedly disappeared." "What?" I asked with furrowed brows. "That man was standing outside the door with his arm inside, and as everything disappeared in the room, so did his arm." "Are you on drugs?" I asked. "Because whatever the hell you're saying isn't making any damn sense." "Well, then let me ask you this. Where is his arm?" he said with a slightly raised voice. "And while you're at it, remember that it's 32nd December today, which is literally impossible." I didn't know what to say. Well, there wasn't actually anything to say. Everything happening was actually impossible. "Blake, come in," my radio crackled with life as Jane spoke from the other end. "What is it?" "Go to 19th Lane. I think you might want to see what happened there." I looked at Drew and he nodded. We both got in his car and drove away. "We reckon the riots will start pretty soon, and there will definitely be people thinking this is the end of the world." Drew thought something else. "What makes you think it's not the end?" I asked. "It's hard to explain. I need you to trust me. It's not the end just yet." I never really knew what was going on in his mind, but I knew that knows a hell of a lot more than I do. We arrived at the address given. We went in and there was yet again nobody or nothing. I heard a loud bang from their house and went to make sure of they're okay, but there was no one in there, the neighbor who found the house like that told us. "We have to stop this from going on the news," Drew said as we walked away from the house. "I don't think it will. We've only found 2 houses like this." "We have," he interrupted me, "but we have to assume that there's more happenings like this across the town." I heard a ping from my phone and pulled it out of my pocket to see what it was. "Well, you wouldn't be wrong about that," I said to Drew as I showed him the news article on my phone. "Strange disappearances spotted in the town of Fisher. Thankfully, it was our local news article, so it probably didn't get out to people out of here." "Well, fuck." He sighed. He pulled out his phone and warned Jane about the riots and to prepare teams to get it under control. He was surprisingly right. Riots started an hour later with people raiding stores and hoarding every little thing they can get their hands on. "How'd you know about the riots?" I asked him. "Well, that's a question for another day. Let me drop you home." "Aren't we going to the station to give the report?" "Ah, there's no need for that. No one's there at this moment," he said. I always tried asking him how he knew all these things, but he didn't budge. After Drew dropped me off, I decided to have some sleep. I figured it wasn't long before he would call me in again. I woke up to blaring alarms and red and blue lights shining through my window. I checked my clock. 12:43 and I got dressed to go outside and already found Drew sitting at my table, pouring himself a cup of whiskey which was kept in the fridge. How the hell did you... I didn't finish my sentence. He already knew what I was going to say. You left your window open. He finished the whiskey and kept the glass on the table. Let's go. There was no one in my neighbor's house. It was just like the previous night. Everyone and everything disappeared. What happened to the man who lost his arm? I asked as I remembered him. He's nowhere to be found. Security says they didn't see anyone leave, and if he had jumped out the window, he wouldn't have survived for long. I held my head in my hands. What the hell is happening? Why is all this happening? There has to be some stop to it. Breathe, Drew said as he kept his hand on my shoulder. We'll put an end to this. Just don't overthink it. After I calmed down a bit, I asked him, has this happened anywhere else? While pointing to the house. In the morning? Yes, 8 more places. I raised my head to face him. His face was calm, even in a situation like this, while I was sweating all over the place. Hey, tell me, is there a pattern to these disappearances? I asked. Nope. As far as I know, they're completely random. Then that means that this could happen to us too? Precisely, I sighed. How could he day that with so much certainty and calmness? The rest of the day was spent at the station, seeing reports about different disappearances and riots all over the city. I asked Drew, as I always do, how he knows what will happen and how he stays so calm, even in a situation like this. His answer was the same as always. You'll know when the time comes. That night when I went to bed, I checked the date once again, 33rd December. Maybe I'll wake up from this nightmare. I woke up to a rumbling sound coming from within the walls. The walls were shaking vigorously. I thought I was dreaming for a moment. I tried getting up from my bed, but I couldn't. It was like my weight had increased so much that my body couldn't handle it. My eyelids started to drop as I felt my breath being obstructed by something. I wheezed for air as I finally blacked out. It only felt like it was black for a moment until I woke up again on the ground in a white enclosure. Hello there, a voice called out from behind me. There was a man sitting on a chair with his arms and legs crossed. He wore a navy-colored suit with a white shirt and a red tie. Who are you? I asked while looking around simultaneously. It seemed like there was no door or window in this room. I'm the one you call God. What? I stuttered. Was I really standing in front of God? Let's get this over with. I have to answer some of your questions before you move on. Ask away. Move on where? I asked. Am I dead? You have 2 choices. Either become our slave for 1,000 years or get in the shuffler where your soul will be reshuffled. Your identity will be torn apart and a new one will be made, he said, ignoring my second question. I raised my hand to ask, but stopped. If he really is God, I'm going to take a guess he doesn't have much time. On top of that, he said to answer some of my questions, that means I'll have to choose them carefully. After much thinking, I asked, what's happening on Earth? Why has 2021 not arrived? A grin spread across his face. Finally, someone asked that. He snapped his fingers and a board appeared in an instant. There's a pandemic going on Earth right now. As he spoke, some foreign writings appeared on the board. And pandemics usually come every century. Every century, my higher-ups give me a year to cause deaths. I mean, I usually cause deaths, but I have a year in which I can kill as many people as I want to get the maximum energy for our world without disturbing the balance of both of our worlds. His higher-ups? I thought he was God, so why does he take orders from others? 2020 was one of them. The deaths this year were low, lower than the higher-ups expected. Because of that, I had to increase the days of December to get the demanded amount of energy. He finally snapped his fingers and the board disappeared. What do you mean by energy in your world? I asked. Oh, that. We created your world because our world needed energy. Once upon a time, our world was in ruins, with dark wizards taking the energy for themselves. Oh, we had a wizard on our side that helped us create your world, and your deaths gave us that much needed energy to survive. And you caused deaths, how? Plagues, old people, organ failures, stuff like that. Then how the hell am I here? Am I dead? He had a look of shame on his face. To get the demanded energy, I have to use the magic of our world to get you to this plane. Normal death would take time, granted that they are guaranteed. I have to ignore the rules to get the demanded energy. It's the only way they won't change me. I was angry. He just killed us to take energy for his own world. I didn't think God would be like this, just killing people for his own sake. And, am I fucking dead or not? I shouted, letting my anger leak out. No, not yet. I glanced at him. I was standing in front of God himself. How was I not dead? This method I use, it takes a little while to kill the person by itself. Not like the natural ways which guarantee a death, but take time. I have to make sure that by this method people do die, and I have done just that till now, and I will keep doing it until I satisfy the higher-ups. He had a maniacal look to him. He didn't look like that when I first saw him minutes ago. Well, choose, he boomed out as I was about to ask another question. Servitude or the shuffler? Wait, I said as I took some steps back from him. You have 10 seconds. He stood up and started coming toward me. Choose. Those 10 seconds passed in an instant as I contemplated between the two and thought of a way to get out at the same time. He jumped at me and covered my face with his hand. A burning sensation took over me as I screamed in pain and wriggled to get out. But he held me in place. He got off of me in an instant. The burning sensation went away, but my face still pained and it hurt to open my left eye. I looked at him. He looked scared as he crawled on the ground, looking into the air while hyperventilating. The white enclosure seemed like it was glitching as the ground and the floor started disappearing and appearing. What's happening? I asked him. Drew, he said. You know Drew, don't you? What about him? How do you know him? I caught him once, many years ago. Managed to get away. Lucky bastard. He caught Drew. How did he meet Drew? How the hell did he get out of this place? A strange rumbling started. It sounded like the one I heard in my bedroom. How did you meet Drew? I asked him. He was looking behind me while sweating. He was really nervous, judging by his looks. I looked behind. A door appeared, which looked exactly like my bedroom's. Hey, stop. You want to know about Drew? I'll tell you, just stay right there. I had two choices. Either learn about Drew right now or go back and ask it himself. I knew the latter won't work, and he'll turn me around in riddles again, but the former seemed like it'll kill me if I stay around to ask him questions. He looked exhausted and scared for some reason. I decided what I had to do. I started walking towards my door. I felt a great force pulling me backwards, but I didn't stop. I crawled towards the door and opened it. A bright white light blinded me. I woke up in my bed as sunlight streamed in through the windows. I immediately shot up, scanning my surroundings. It seemed like I was really in my house, away from the white room. I looked at the date, 1st January 2021. Were all those days a mere dream? I got out of bed and went to the bathroom and saw some dull burn marks on my face. It looked like a hand shape. So it wasn't a dream, I thought. Then that means I heard a knock on my door. I dressed up and went to answer it. Drew was standing outside with 2 cups of coffee in his hands. Morning, Hatike. I invited him and he sat down on the couch. Were you taken by God someday? I asked without hesitation. For the first time in my life, I saw him for a few seconds with a dumbfounded face. As he came to realize what happened, he said, yes, many years ago. How did you come back into this world? Well, how do you? He spun my question around. Well, yeah, I think he made some kind of mistake. The white room started glitching and all, and a door appeared. My door. Drew had a smile stretching across his face. And? And he looked scared, I said. And he knew you. He became scared only after knowing that I knew you. He chuckled. You'll know why he was like that one day, he said. Come on, why the hell do you not tell things straightforwardly? I asked. Do you really want to know? He asked as he finished his coffee and kept the cup on the table. I actually didn't want to know. Figured I wanted to wait, get a break after all that end of the year stuff. And how is it 1st January today? I asked. It was 33rd yesterday. It was, and it's the 1st today. Don't worry, the riots have stopped, and we have it under control. Wait, who's we? I know some certain people who can control situations like this, he said. You know what? When the time's right, I'll introduce you to them. And the people that disappeared, I think they are dead. You are right, he said, but nothing we can do about it now. As far as our town knows, they're missing. Wait, this didn't happen worldwide? Nope, only our town. I think they found something special about our town, but I don't know what. I tried to ask more, but he gave me the don't ask more look. I had many questions, but I believed that Drew would tell me about it someday, or I'll come to know about it, like I did today. Sir, I think you might want to see this. The radio crackled to life with Jane's voice and gave us an address. Drew looked at me. Want to take a look at it? A smile spread on my face. Hell yes.